Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Van Buren Variety Show. I'm Bob Van Buren, your host. Glad you're here. Hope everyone's had a great week so far. I have been kind of busy at work, but got to see family over the weekend, so I can't complain. Family is always important. For those of you that have just tuned in, this is the second episode of Van Buren Variety. The title is exactly what it says. Every Tuesday evening at 7 o'clock Central and 8 o'clock Eastern, there will be a different guest and we will discuss a different topic. It could be a hobby. It could be a profession. We'll also have some entertainment such as musicians, maybe a comedian, other people that will talk about just special interests or a special talent that they have. So every week, Tuesday evening, 7 p.m. Central and 8 p.m. Eastern, different topic, different guests. So we should have a lot of fun and learn something along the way. Tonight, we've got a very special topic, especially for people like me that remember the old arcade games from the 1980s and 1990s. Even if you didn't grow up in that era, I'm sure you've heard a lot about them. Stuff like Galaga, Robotron, Joust, Dig Dug, Donkey Kong, the list goes on. And of course, the ever popular Pac-Man. But you know, as time goes on, technology changes. So there's new games that come on board. And so, unfortunately, lots of times the technology gets left behind. Those that were working on them at the time have retired, or they're just the company that makes these parts doesn't make them anymore. So what happens to these arcade games? Well, unfortunately, more often than not, they get trashed or they're scavenged or, taking the cables out or the wires out. So we need to keep up with the old classic games, how they all started, even including Asteroids and Space Invaders, all the really good ones. Of course, we've all had the ones we've had at home. I know I had this one. This was my football game that I had as a kid. So never was good at it. But my favorite game of all, handheld game, was this one. My Rocket Pinball machine. Never goes good at that either. But yeah, Rocket Pinball, I probably spent hours upon that. So, but like this game, it's probably not even made anymore. So we need people to keep the technology up to not only refresh the memories of us that played these games, but also the new generation that wants to see where we've come from since long before the Xbox. And so my guest tonight is just such a person that does that. So we're going to bring him on board now and let him tell us more about kind of his profession and his hobby. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mike. He's going to talk to us. Very good. How you doing, Mike? He's going to tell us more about the arcade games and how he fixes them and refurbishes them. Mike, welcome to the Van Buren Variety Show. Glad you're here.
I'm glad to be here. Good talking to you, Bob.
Well, the first question, I guess, for our audience is what got you interested in this? What got you interested in repairing and refurbishing the old classic games that we remember?
I think when you grow up, say, hey, I'm going to be this when I grow up. I'm going to be that when I grow up. I'm going to own a Toys R Us. I'm going to do whatever. But a lot of times,
sure.
I think an 80s kid is going to say something like, oh, I want to have an arcade when I grow up. And arcades kind of died out, after the fighting games in the 90s. And then you started getting more into the 2000s. And then it was a little less and less and less. And the home systems kind of caught up. So that industry died. So that dream kind of dwindled. And most places that were left were, Chuck E. Cheese, which is kind of more of a child casino at this stage, just getting tickets and going and getting prizes for the tickets. So I went to an arcade bar. It's called Barcadia in Dallas. And it was more bar than arcade. It had more. It was more of the drinking and everything. And the arcades were a little secondary. And this was years ago. This has probably been. I used to go with a buddy named Zane. This has probably been, I want to say maybe 10 to 12 years ago we went. And I said, man, this is just great. You can come and have a drink and you can play Galaga and you can play this. A lot of the machines weren't necessarily refurbished. They were just active and ready to play and kind of beat down a little bit.
Sure.
And now I said, but if I ever did it, if I ever, was able to run a place, I would want my machines to look like they did when they first came out. I'd want to clean them up and refurbish them and not really have anything down. And that just once I got an auction in 2017, June of 2017. I won this auction, and I won an Aliens Extermination, and I won a big NASCAR. I mean, it was huge. It was this big Honda Civic outside, and it moved and everything. It was really cool. But both were broken, and I fixed one of them that night. I fixed the NASCAR, and it took me about 6 days of researching online and doing that sort of thing to be able to fix the Aliens Extermination. But I got it up and running, and I told my wife, I said, hey, I feel like I have a little bit of a knack for this, and I'm really interested in it. What if I made a plan to, in 3 years, open an arcade, and I'll just buy games every month, broken and destroyed for the most part, and I'll refurbish them and make them look as close to new as the parts are allowed, whatever's out there. And, I'll spend this set amount of money, which, I ended up overspending a lot of those months. But
we all do.
And that's what I did. I just stored games for about 3 years, and I worked on them every free moment I got. Every time I was off work, my brother would meet me on a Saturday night at like 9:30 when I'd get off work at my regular job. We stay up till 5 a.m. working on and cleaning and fixing and sanding and repairing and reseating ROMs and rebuilding monitors and everything until, sometimes 5 a.m. in the morning. And I'd go home and get some sleep and wake up and hit it again. And we did that for 3 years. And because I said, in the summer of 2017, I said, I'm going to open in the summer of 2020. And that's what we did. So that's how I got into it.
That is awesome. Yeah, I'm glad you're doing that, because unfortunately, I have seen games go on the wayside where they're just beyond repair. Even the game will work, but the logos and all the paintwork are messed up and scratched, and so it's kind of heartbreaking in a way. Absolutely. So, but I'll ask you this: you refurbish everything, but have you found? Because I know I talked in my monologue about technology changing.
Sure.
I go back to like the old 8-track tapes, the reel-to-reels, No company makes those anymore. And how do you find parts for these old arcade games?
So the good thing about the arcade games that came out that late 70s or through the 80s, more that popular time in arcades when your Pac-Mans and Galagos and Star Wars and Robotron and all that time period, they were made, a lot of them were made here, and a lot of them were made with big parts that big hands can actually put together. And I say big, there's still, a capacitor like this, or a little ROM or something like that. But they're, other than some weird custom chips and things like that, it's pretty common stuff. Even to this day, you can get those things. And there's, I can't program a ROM here, but there's people out there that do. And you can get a whole new set of ROMs. And so if you got one that's gone bad, you can replace them. Sometimes those chips are socketed, so they're pretty easy to remove. And even if they are a little solder work, once you get past that little, oh my God, I think I'm a little scared of going to burn something or mess something up. Once you get past that, you can learn to work on them, and it's not as daunting as it seems. So reading schematics is still pretty daunting to me, and I still run into problems, and I'm like, all right, I got to send this off to the one board guy that can work on this or something like that. But being able to fix a monitor, that's huge. If you want to keep them looking like they did. Sure. And I tell people, about 85% of the time I can fix it myself, but I'll even run into issues with that. And you gotta source it out. You gotta have someone, there's, a great group of guys over in Grand Prairie, and they'll help you out, so there's ways to get around it if you don't have the knowledge, but I'm trying to learn every day. So.
Sure. That's interesting. Well, that actually brings up to my next question for you, Mike. Did you have, when you took this on, arcade refurbishing, did you, or had you gone to any kind of technical school or any kind of college, or did you just learn on your own? How did you get the knowledge?
I feel like the people watching, my friends, my brother, that sort of thing, they're going to have heard this answer 100 times, but I call it idiot school, and it's YouTube. It's right here. This is where I learned almost everything.
Oh, wow.
I didn't go to any kind of formal school, formal training. I've read a ton online, and I'm constantly taking notes and applying to what I learned. But most of it I've learned on YouTube or forums. There's KLOV forum that, does a lot of
Mm-hmm.
arcade. I mean, you can scroll through there, you kind of type in the arcade and the problem you're having. A lot of times you can find whole lists of people done. Hey, this is what I did, what I checked out. And I'll tell you what, it's a good feeling when you can figure it out on your own and don't have to send it off. So I always try that first because I'm not going to learn otherwise. And I
Mm-hmm.
knew that taking on this position, owning an arcade, that I was going to have to be the full-time tech here. And if I wasn't able to fix the little problems, the
Mm-hmm.
electrical issues or monitors that go out or things like that, then I was going to spend a fortune getting things fixed all the time. So, if I hadn't took that 3 years to learn a little bit and mostly from YouTube, it would be a tough thing for someone to get into it without the technical knowledge that you pick up over just time. Or if you go to a school, but again, there's a guy named Randy that's fantastic with it. I mean, he can look at a schematic, like it's like X-ray vision, you can see everything going on. But that's in Florida, and you can go take a class down there and stuff. So there's nothing that I had readily available, especially family, full-time job, the whole thing. I had to late nights on the computer, man. That's how I learned.
So in other words, it's a YouTube 101, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's a way to go.
Well, let me ask you just what are some challenges? And what I mean by challenges is here's how I want to rephrase the question. What is the most common problem that you're seeing when you're refurbishing an old arcade game? Is there a specific issue that you see more than others to try to get the machine up and running again?
The way. So so it's really what you're targeting, right? So if you got a handful of cash and you can target machines that are working, you're going to spend a lot more money, and that problem is going to be a little different. That's really not what I targeted. I targeted games that were this close to falling apart or not working at all, or playing blind is a lot of times what you'll see online. Oh, I got this game. I know it works because I can hear it, but it's playing blind, which just means the monitor's out, and
sure.
So that was the first thing I really focused on learning, as far as a technical thing, is trying to work on old monitors. And a lot of times it's little simple things. All the capacitors are 40 years old and they need to be replaced.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a little bit more, hey, it's blowing a fuse every time you plug it in. And then you got now I got to track down, or there's these certain diodes that go out, so you check them, or you can take your multimeter to the horizontal output transistor, and is it open? And so you kind of work your way through it, and then, there it is, it's out, and I replace it, and pop, it comes on, and you're happy. So I'd say, to answer your question, problems with old arcade machines, it's two for me. It's usually the monitor shot or the cabinets in really bad shape. So learning some woodworking is huge. And some people, they'll rest on that. Hey, I just like the patina of it. I like it looked worn and used. And there's nothing wrong with that opinion. It's just not the way what I was targeting. I really wanted to look. Hey, it's 1992 again. This is what Simpsons, X-Men, Street Fighter. That's what they look like. Oh, it feels like 84 because that Pac-Man's got a fresh stencil job on the side of it, and all the corners were knocked off and been bondoed back together. So number one problem: monitor, technical side, and then appearance on the cabinet side.
And I'm with you on that. I remember them when they were brand new, right off the truck, basically. So, I want to go back to, for me, 1985, Back to the Future.
Yeah.
Expect to see Doc Brown and Marty McFly come in any minute.
And that was like the whole, traveling on the electric starship, right? You get to go through time and kind of play the games that you wanted to play, and that's where that came from too. So.
Well, lots of us, like I said, and probably a lot of people in my audience, we grew up with these games.
Sure.
I mean, we were there when, for example, the Space Invaders and the Asteroids, and of course, Pac-Man and Galaga came out. So we're used to games, and we're so happy that we get a chance to play them again. We can be teenagers again. But my question now is, in your business, what do the younger generation think of this? People that weren't even born or even thought of when these games came out. What kind of reception are you seeing with the younger crowd?
I mean, it's fantastic. Kids absolutely love it here. And I mean, from, your 3-year-old toddler into that 5 and 6-year-old, and especially your boys and girls in that early tween age, when you're 9, 10, 11s, and then teenagers. And then you start getting into your, that 21-year-old age and up, and it's like, oh my gosh, there's a place I can drink and then be in competition with somebody at, you know, Mortal Kombat or something like that. So, or air hockey or something. But kids absolutely love it. I think it's really fun for the parents too, because they're seeing these old games, and there's finally a place they can go and take their little daughter or their son. And
Sure.
hey, I played this when I was your age, you know, and I haven't seen it in 20 years, but I used to play this, and they'll play with them. They love it. I mean, it's a kind of akin to me. The first time you go to Las Vegas, I mean, even if you don't care about gambling, you're still in the spectacle of lights, right? You're like looking around,
Sure.
all the big signs flashing and everything. And I think when kids walk in here, a lot of times they wander and don't know what to even do. They don't know how to play them.
Sure. They've never seen it.
You know, they're up there, they're pulling both joysticks and not hitting the buttons, or just hitting the buttons, or they're hitting the buttons and loading tons of credits on, or they go up to a racing game and they just spin the steering wheel like they're on The Price is Right. I mean, it's just kind of part of it, but I never see them not smiling. You know, they're always happy. A lot of times they're wandering around, don't know what to do because it's overload. Yeah, generally really, really well. I haven't seen many kids come in here and go, meh, it's okay. I haven't seen that. You know, it's mostly like,
this is so ancient, right?
Yeah. Most of them, they walk in and they're just like, oh my, I never thought I would see this. I've heard about it. You know, mom and dad's talked about it, but wow, now I get to experience it. So it's really neat. From all ages, the reception is there. You know, much older crowd, or even crowd, you know, my age, you know,
Sure.
40s. They love the pinball when they come in and see that. So yeah, it's a good. I think it's a place for everyone. You know,
It's good. We have a question from somebody from chat. I think I know the answer, but I thought I'd ask you, the expert. The
Sure.
question is from Jean Hudson, and she's asking, what was the first arcade game? I think I know, but I think I know. What did you say it
I
was?
think it's Pong, right?
I believe it is Pong.
I think it's Pong. I think that's the you know, there might be some sort of technicality that gets that to be the wrong answer, but I think the general answer is Pong. So
Isn't that the one where you have the things on each side and you can
yeah,
hit
you got
the
two
ball?
paddles, the line in the middle, and you got a square that's a ball, and it's back and forth. You know, and then there's variations of that, right? You know, you add another paddle and you can call it a different game. Yeah, so there's a billion variations of Pong, but yeah, I'm pretty sure Pong. Someone's going to be like, I can't believe you own an arcade, you don't know, but I think it's Pong.
Yeah, I was waiting for you, but I think it was Pong, and yeah, that was one of the first ones. Now, the first one I personally remember was Asteroids.
Oh
and
yeah,
it didn't even look like an asteroid; it looked like a little blob, you know, coming down the little screen. Yeah, folks, I'm that ancient. Sorry.
Oh no, we have Asteroids Deluxe here, which is really cool. It just has more of a periscoping technique where it looks like the playfield's floating in front of a really cool cardboard asteroid background. So pretty neat.
Well, Mike, I have to tell you, my favorite game of all is Robotron.
Oh, nice.
I've spent hours
right over here, over my shoulder.
Right over there, yeah, right behind you. I see it.
Yeah, there you go.
That's been my game. So let me ask you, Mike. I mean, I know this is probably a hard question for you. You've got so many,
sure.
Which arcade game is your favorite to play?
You know, that's you add to play at the end of it. That changes the answer a little bit, but I feel like we're just going to have the Robotron 2084 talking hour at this point, because I actually love playing Robotron. There's one of my regulars, his name's Ryan. He's 16 years old and he's in love with it. He beats me at it, which is, there you go. You know, I've
he's
passed
16. Oh, wow.
16. He beats the dog out of me at Robotron 2084. My favorite all-time game, if you would have asked me before I started collecting all these, and we have over 100 games. I think we're right around that 130, 35 mark. I don't have those all on the floor because I like to rotate them because we have monthly pass holders that come in. But my favorite was the Vector Star Wars that's also, you know, right here behind me.
Destroy the Death Star, yep.
Yeah, that's the first arcade machine I owned, and I've owned that machine for over 20 years now. Like, I've just kind of carried it with me. I was a big Star Wars guy, big Star Wars collector, so to have that arcade, and when I was a kid, I knew every arcade in the Metroplex that had it. There was a Boomtown arcade inside Six Flags. It had it. I'd go there. Before this was Putt Putt or Alley Cats or whatever it is in North Richland Hills, they had a Malibu Speed Zone. They had it there. And, I mean, it would be the first game I'd run to. So all-time favorite is Vector Star Wars. My favorite's in the arcade to play right now, still Robotron. I still play it 2 or 3 times a day just to, you know, see if I can get any better at it. Dig Dug, I never played it as a kid, and we have it, and I got kind of hooked on it for a while. And that was one, like, I sit, put your stool in front of it and just play for, 20 minutes. I'm getting better at it too. So, but yeah, Robotron, Star Wars, those two. You go into the 90s, I'm a big Mortal Kombat guy. Some people are a little more Street Fighter than Mortal Kombat.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you'd have asked me in the 90s, those early, oh my God, all about Mortal Kombat 2 especially. So I loved those games.
I've known people that love that game. Yeah, I was terrible at it, but I've known people that really do like it. Oh, well, those arcade games, when you buy one, I know you have to have the space for it, but so what is the average size, height, width of an arcade game on average? What space are you looking at?
I always say they're like a small refrigerator is what they always feel like when you move them. They're a little under 6 feet, especially the older ones. The older ones have like a 19-inch monitor in them, typically. So you always kind of feel the same weight when you're moving a Centipede or a Pac-Man or Galaga. You're moving something classic around because they didn't really go to those 25-inch monitors where they were like common in everything for a while. You move a 90s machine, you're looking at a game that's a few inches taller. So those probably come in right under 6 feet. I would say they're probably about 2.5 feet wide. And typically, it's according if it's a one-player or two-player game. Two-player games tend to be a little wider. You start moving into Mortal Kombat, though, or Killer Instinct, or God bless, one of those X-Men or Simpsons that have like the 4-player, you're getting all kinds of size. I personally love the variety of an American arcade machine. There's just you got really tall ones, I'm just looking around, really wide ones, odd shaped ones. I mean, and even back then, some of the aesthetic was beautiful. A game like Tron that has, a white black lights in it and a glowing, a trans light behind it that's glowing. And sometimes the game is not nearly as fun as just looking at the machine, the cabinet. And I love that about arcades. I love the artwork. There's got to be so many unsung heroes that made this beautiful cabinet art on the sides of these things. And
absolutely,
a lot of times they're slim and tucked between each other. So anyway, I'm rambling.
No, you're not. I'm beating it up. Our audience is loving it. I did like to ask you though, on a video arcade game, do you need like a special power outlet, or can you plug it into a standard outlet? What kind of power do these things take? So
that's a great question. So my experience in any arcade game that I've dealt with, pinball included, that's a 120 volt outlet that's just like in your house. Typically, you want to ground them, so they have that third plug. So 120 volts goes in, and a lot of these machines use some sort of power supply, something that switches that power up and changes the voltage, because you can't send 120 volts into a little printed circuit board and the last line. It's just going to fry everything on there. So a lot of times you're sending 5 volts into that. So it doesn't take much. A lot of people are like, man, the power that your electric bill must be so high. Literally, the fluorescent bulb in a lot of these is drawing more power than the actual game is.
Really?
The monitor is running is like an old TV set, like everybody had in their house. So it's just, I mean, there's some, some of the arcade guys goes, oh, it's a TV set, because that's essentially just an old TV set in there. It's wired a little differently. You can't just slam a TV in one. I mean, you have to kind of do some stuff. But, there's a lot of people, including myself, that have taken tubes out of a CRT TV, that cathode ray tube, and taken it out and put it in an arcade chassis and made it work,
Wow.
So you can a lot of times those tubes are sitting on the side of the roads. And I think that's honestly preserving the way an arcade machine looks. You have to have that CRT, that old school monitor in there. There's not many games that I want to put like an LCD monitor in. I mean, if it didn't come with an LCD monitor, I don't think I have a game in this arcade that has one in it. That if it had a tube in it, that's what it's running. So power, 120 volts right out of the wall. You can plug one right in. It should work just fine. You plug a whole bunch into the same circuit. Worst thing happens, throw a breaker.
Sure.
You try to have surge protectors on things because you want to protect some of these boards inside, or I said the chips and the capacitors and things that are populating on the boards are for the most part, they're common if they're older. you start getting into stuff with custom chips, some of the fighting games, once they go, you're sourcing only other boards a lot of times. So you want to protect those best you can. But if anyone in the audience is saying, oh, I want to put an arcade machine in your house, you don't have to like rewire anything. You literally can plug it into the wall. So you should be fine. It's just, you want to make sure that everything on the inside of the arcade machine is getting the voltage it's supposed to get. That's why some games freeze up. That's why some games don't turn on at all. It's because the switching power supply or whatever older power supply that's running is not doing what it's supposed to be doing.
I see.
So a lot of times fixing a game is simply taking the old power supply out, putting a new one in, and then making sure you wire it right. So, and some power supply is another common issue with some of these games that, it used to work and it just doesn't. If you're just not getting any power, but the marquee's coming on, that means that 120 is coming out of the wall. It's lighting up the light on the top, but it ain't turning anything on inside of it because some switching power supply and there's some disconnect there. So,
have you ever found a game that just, for lack of a better word, was beyond repair? And what I mean by beyond repair is, sometimes code gets messed up in there.
Sure.
Or some, not describe it, something happens. Where I'm just making this up. It'll go to level 3 and it just completely just crashes. Have you ever had to, for lack of a better word, re-image a machine? If you ever had to re-image, where did you get the original image for that game? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. So the way these work, and there's going to be some more technically sound guys than myself look at this and just think I'm an idiot for what I say. So I apologize to you guys. You guys are and that's okay. So, the way these work, they typically, you're powering up a board, and then that board is sending an image to that cathode ray tube, right? But it's running through all kinds of little circuits and ROMs to tell it what to do and when to do it, and then there you go. So the only machines I've ran into that I've seen, like, okay, the screen is glitching up, that's usually a ROM error. That's some chip that's maybe dirty, maybe need to just be pulled out, cleaned a little bit, and reseated back. Sometimes you got some traces that might be messed up, like where that signal's running through has been cut, or some solder's been laid across 2 traces and now it's doing some weird stuff. I haven't really seen too much where, okay, the image is just gone, but, and you have to re-image them. There's ROMs that, hey, they're bad, they're corrupt, they're screwed up, but there's hobby ROMs, burns ROMs, and I remember when I got my Punch Out. You remember Nintendo Punch Out, where you're the wireframe green guy,
that
played played Mike Tyson's Punch Out, but the original arcade was just Punch Out.
Sure.
And you didn't play as Little Mac, you played as like a wireframe guy, so you could see through him at the opponent. Anyway, when I first got that, my colors were jacked up, and there was some big QB square stuff on their face, and you think, oh, this game's shot. It's really not. It's just ROMs inside, these like little chips, and they're socketed. And a lot of times you can pull them out, clean them, and fix them. Or if they're corrupt and you don't have ROM burning technology at your workshop or whatnot, or you don't know the know-how. But again, that stuff seems simple, but it doesn't even cost that much to just have someone burn them for you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and you just, you might be out $40, $50, something more if there's a whole lot of them, but it's not that hard. To me, it's not. Some people look at it and are just flat scared, especially working on a monitor. They're like, whoa, hey, 5 volts going to a board. Who cares? 120 volts going to a monitor. Somebody's going to care. That might pop you back, on your butt, or stop your heart or something. So people get freaked out.
Or all the above.
Working on monitors freaks people out, but the board work's not. There's people that know how to diagnose a board, and those are true artists in this industry. I'm not a diagnosing board kind of guy. You see a few things and you think, oh, I can probably fix that, and I can in those occasions. But like I said, if it gets too south for me, there's a local guy named Raymond. He was telling me last week, I was like, oh, just send me this part. The sound went out on X-Men. I said, I can replace that part. He's like, it's got some surface mounted chips, and and I looked at it and I went, yeah, I'll just pay him and I'll go see him. I don't. Why would I want to mess that up when he can do it really easy? Because he's got better tools than I got. So, and much more know-how. Obviously, he's been doing it a long time. So,
that's neat. Oh, yeah, that's very interesting.
Cool. Yeah, it's fun.
We got a question again from chat. Someone's asking you, quote, do you only fix old arcade games, or have you ever thought of fixing things like jukeboxes, unquote?
I'll get the occasional call up here where somebody wants me to work on a jukebox or wants me to work on a gambling, like a gaming machine.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that people that are really interested in that are probably going to be better at it. I'm much better at things I'm interested in, and I've really never had any experience at that. I have made house calls. I have a regular named Galen. He'll have something go down on a machine, and I go to his house, and he literally pays me in pizza to come over and work on it.
That's a good deal.
It's a great deal. I love pizza, and I don't mind going to his house because he's cool. So
me too.
I've worked on that. I've worked on a couple of my other regulars, and I'll work on stuff I don't have experience with. But usually, if I don't have much of a interest in it, then I'll then no, I don't work on jukeboxes or gaming machines for that matter.
Sure. Let's talk about your games, your business. Just top of your head, can you name some of the games or most of the games that you've got right now? I'm sure people would be interested to see what you've got.
I can see them all, a whole room full of them.
Yeah.
So I tried to, when I set out to do this, one of the first things I did, and I don't know if I have it up here. No, we cleaned it off I used to have a little stack here. I went through and I made a list of and I literally watched videos on YouTube forever of what is considered the top 10 classic games from the 80s. What is considered the top 10 or top 20 or top 25, top 50 sometimes games from the 90s. What are the top 10 fighting games? Very genre specific. What are the top 10
That's good. Games? Yeah.
And so that was the first month I did put that together. And so then I had a hit list, all right? So now I have something to target. Okay, I don't want to open my arcade up until I have, Pac-Man and Galaga and Centipede. And these are very important when people walk in because there's some legitimacy there, right? You're not going to, a place that doesn't have Pac-Man in it, I almost think you're not going to be taken seriously. You can't I'm not going to open an arcade, but I'm going to have something as iconic as Pac-Man missing. And
people would notice that too.
People would notice that. And I'm going to tell you, when I got in front of City Hall in Haltom City here to talk to them about opening an arcade, which was a very foreign and weird thing to hear, what in the world are you thinking? But they loved the idea. First 7 to 8 questions I got was, do you have Centipede? Do you have Galaga? Do you have
Yep.
Do you have, they're going down this hit list, and I'm like, yes, I do. Yes, I do. Yes, to the point where they're naming anything to try to get me to say no at this point because I took my time and I put that together. So to answer your question, what games do we have? Very high-end specific games, hit list to each position in the genre. So if you're looking for a fighting game, you're going to be able to play your Street Fighters, your Killer Instinct, your Mortal Kombat, your Marvel vs. Capcom, Tekken, WrestleMania. If you're wanting a brawler, like something to sit, hey, you got 2 kids with you, mom and dad, you get in front of The Simpsons or X-Men or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, or, you're going to have the ability to do that here at the Electric Starship because I didn't want those big games to really be missing. And there's games, I'm always looking for them. I'm buying games all the time. I bought a game last week, and I'm looking every day for new games because I always want to refurbish them. And plus, I want things to be a little fresher, especially for these monthly pass holders who come in month in and month out. I love that when that month rolls over to say, hey, I just put out an older game. I put out, a Missile Command, and we put out a newer fighting game called Mace the Dark Age. It's kind of rare, and you tell them a little history about it and, why it was important or why it was lost in time and nobody cares, that sort of thing. Games like that, I'm going to have them. As you can see behind me here, Tempest, Centipede, Star Wars, Robotron, Crystal Castle, Cubert, Joust, Dig Dug, Dragon's Lair. There's Star Wars going off there.
Yeah.
Donkey Kong Jr. I mean, again, you open up an arcade, you don't have Donkey Kong, people are going to question your choices.
They're going to cut you,
What are you thinking? So I have a good variety of just the staples that you have to have, and then I have what I feel like is a good variety of just really fun stuff people probably forgot. And then there's a few rare games. They're kind of tucked in and out that people usually don't even know what they are, but I know how rare they are, and I'm like just excited to have them in the collection. So it's fun, you know.
Interesting.
Yeah, Gauntlet Legends, NBA Jam, Blitz, both those games. If you don't have NBA Jam or Blitz, you're going to have some questions. You're like, hey, you know about Blitz? I'm here to play Blitz. Golden Tee. Golden Tee is a weird one, right? Because that's not a classic for a lot of people. It's not a classic arcade game. That's a game they played in whatever bar all through their 20s, right? And there's people that walk in here specifically, get a beer, they'll go to one game, and that's it. That's all they play, you know, the whole time. There's a lady that comes in, gets a beer, a certain beer, and she walks over to Pac-Man and plays Pac-Man and slides out the door before we can say bye. You know, people will get a couple beers and a couple of friends, and they just go play Golden Tee. But the good news is once they've paid $10 here, you can play all these games as much as you want. You know, so it's really fun.
So I'll make sure while you're on that subject. So it's a flat fee. It's not like back in the olden day, you had to put quarter in after quarter after quarter after quarter. $10 is all you can play.
Another thing with you know, when you build a business plan, if you're going to open something up, to give yourself that time to. While I was learning how to work on arcade machines to avoid such huge technical or, you know, tech costs. My dog's underneath me. Sorry.
Okay, no problem at all.
Dog up
on the show.
Yeah, he's trying to climb up in the show here. You do a lot of research. Say, okay, what do people like the most? And toting around a bucket full of quarters or tokens, that had kind of faded. You know, there is a great feeling to be able to walk up and actually there's some nostalgia to put in a token in.
Yep, like that.
yeah, just throw it from as far as you can. Like Michael Jackson in an old video, you just like flick it. And what video was that? Smooth Criminal. He like flicks it across.
That was Smooth Criminal.
Goes into the jukebox. But
you do realize you just aged us, right?
I'm telling you, yeah, totally. Pop culture idiocy here. Like it's just
that's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, it's great. I love it. But you know, I did that research, the cards, the loading cards, I wanted to keep it low cost. I wanted to keep it real simple. And I wanted to make it where there was some appeal to spending all day in the arcade, but being able to complete a game. I can't tell you how many times I've had people walk up to me and say, I just beat House of the Dead 2. And I was never able to do it as a kid because I only got X amount of dollars. I only got $5, and you only get to like level 2 before you're out of lives. Sure. Yeah. I just beat The Simpsons for the first time because I was able to sit in front of it and just hit the free play button over and over. So yeah, all our games are set to free, and you pay $10 at the door, and you get a wristband, and you're off and going. For as long you know the hours are in your favor. So we do a $20 monthly pass as well. So and then those people really love those people. Become your regulars, right? Then it becomes Cheers. And that was another thing I really wanted in this is I wanted a place where, you know, on Cheers, the sitcom, for all you watching at home, you're probably like, of course we know Cheers. It's a great sitcom, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
At the beginning, the theme song, a place, you know, you want to go where everyone knows your name was that theme. And here it was, I had that same thought. I was like, I want a place where everyone goes and you know, where everyone knows your game. Is kind of what
sure, absolutely. I like that.
Yeah, thank you. So I get to you know, experience people experiencing these games, and when they walk in and say, "Oh, you don't have my favorite game," I go, "What's your favorite game?" Tron. Like, come here, I'm gonna show you one of the best Trons you've ever seen. And they're like, "What?" It's around this corner here. Or, "Oh, you don't have my favorite game." Really? Let me see if I don't have it. Come prove to me that I don't have it, because I'm gonna see if I do. And even if I don't, I'm there. You know, interacting with the client and showing them a way they can play it, you know, or something that's like it. Or, you know, why do you like this game? You know, there's a little bit of, you know, you ask them the whys, and they'll give you some answers there. So fun.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Now you refurbished a lot of these older machines, but let me ask you this: I mentioned earlier, I kind of made an analogy, like 8-track recorders, reel-to-reels, and you know, no company that I know makes those anymore. So the games that you have or the games you've experienced, are those games still being made like today, or are they completely went to the wayside and you have to fix the old ones?
For the most part, everything I have in here with the exception of very, very small amount of things, is all old. It's all vintage.
Oh, the original.
It's all original, all vintage. You have some things you can do. If you have an old cabinet, you can plug in a RetroPie or a Pandora's box or even an old computer and run like MAME on it, that sort of thing. But for the most part, it's all vintage stuff. Now, as far as people making modern games, people make modern pinball machines. Pinball machines still being built right now.
Sure.
There's several companies that do that, and we have I have some games from the 90s, like pinball machines, early 90s, and then I have some games that were all made in the last 2 or 3 years. So, but as far as new arcade games, I think the newest games I have in here were maybe made in the 2000s, or early 2000s, or maybe 2000.
A while, yeah.
I got a 4-player Pac-Man. I got an indie game called Killer Queen that's a whole lot of fun. Guitar Hero that came out several years back. I have that in here. A newer version of Afterburner is in here. But other than that, you're looking at the old tubes and the old games, your stuff that was predominantly 80s and 90s.
Sure. Well, let's shift gears here a little bit. You brought up pinball games, which is, I want to get into that. You have some pinball game machines. Sure. You have to refurbish those as well. I mean, is that a little bit different from arcade games? A little more challenging, more simple? How would you describe that?
All that, yes.
All of the above.
There's several different words, and you have to be careful because I don't want to offend anybody, on a technical side of things. So, because I am by no means the end or answer to anything. I'm one of those guys that knows a little bit about a lot, but not a whole lot about, I'm not like, that's my thing.
Sure.
So restoring a game, you find a game that's been converted. This happened a lot in arcades back in the day. There's operators would take a machine that had stopped making money, say Joust. I've seen a lot of converted Joust. They'd buy a kit, and put in a new board, a new this. They'd kill all the artwork. Well, you find that game, you're like, I want it to be Joust again. So now you're having to redo the artwork, and you're redoing the control panel, and
I see what you're saying.
Things, and so you're restoring it to what it was. Maintenance is another thing. So a pinball machine, maintenance is something that I can do, right? Like, so when the little rubbers, you have flippers and they have rubber wrapped around them. When those pop, it's easy to, it's not easy, but in the pinball world, it's super easy, but just you're pulling off glass still, you're operating on the machine. Sometimes little wires that the ball rolls over gets bent. You're bending those back, or replacing a switch, or replacing bulbs. Pinball machines chock full of lights. You're replacing bulbs. But depending on the time period of pinball, the complexity or whatever it is, he had pinballs that started out, they were electromechanical, which means they didn't have any boards or anything. When you look underneath them, you're seeing some engineering magic. Like, it's literally a magic show. You're looking at it and you're like, I don't know how someone thought of this, all these circuits open and closing just to make the reel spin and give you a score, make a bell go off or a light go off at a certain time. Absolutely amazing. So I don't have any of those things. I have no idea how it would work on one. It would be a whole nother class outside of this. When it comes to something mechanical, I'm inclined to those things. So when I look at a pinball machine and I can figure out what wire makes this or what relay makes that, I can replace stuff. But as far as a true diagnosis, it's past me. So a lot of times I'll have people come in and work on our pinball machines, or just in the case recently, I actually took a pinball machine out to Princeton, Texas. And you can just tell when you're around somebody what they're good at. Usually you can say, this guy's going to be able to find this problem really quickly, where it would have took me a lot longer because I'm going to be researching online and I might not be able to read a schematic and find it as easy. So I can't restore a pinball machine, to a short answer. I can do maintenance on one. I can usually fix little things, and I can certainly replace things when they go out. But but as far as restoring one, I mean, you got magicians out there that are literally can take a pinball machine apart, redo the whole play field, redo everything on it. But boy, lots and lots of time. That's something, as a business owner, I do not have that kind of time. I still have time to work on arcade machines because a little bit of woodwork, a little bit of putty, getting the boards and stuff right. Pretty simple in relation to a pinball machine. So, yeah, I don't do much work on them other than maintenance. And there are a lot of maintenance. It's a lot of upkeep.
I'm sure.
Cleaning the play field all the time because it's a lot like a road. You think about rubber tires going across the road, it makes rubber marks. Well, that ball hits rubber stuff all the time, and it slides and makes your playfield dirty. So you're pulling them off and cleaning them, waxing the playfield, and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot to pinball machines. Places that are loaded down with pinball machines, God bless them. That's not my forte. I always want to have some because I don't. Again, there's that legitimacy, right? And you have an arcade, but you don't have any pinball machines. I feel like you're just avoiding problems at that point. Yeah. But, some problems are unavoidable if you're trying to have a great place, right? So we have pinball machines, but I'm never going to have 20 because I think that would be a nightmare.
You just said something that I didn't even think about the pinball machines. Mm-hmm. Like talking about the tire rubber hitting the road. Right. I never thought about that. As much as that ball jumps off, it would get dirty after a while.
The whole playfield it gets like little black streaks and marks all over it. And there's anything flesh tone, like I have a Tales from the Crypt pinball machine, and it's got his face right on the playfield. Well, it just gets dirty, and you got to get of his face, and that's something on an arcade machine. When something gets dirty, it's a joystick or a button and we're walking around wiping those like crazy anyway all the time. But inside glass on a pinball, it's not like you can just reach in there and clean it. It's like you got to set aside a day to shop all your pinball machines, and fix a bulb that's out, or and the ball gets stuck a lot. Just a lot of things. The maintenance on the comparable maintenance on an arcade machine is like, bulb went out, or the starter went out on the fluorescent bulb, or the ballast went out, or I'm putting an LED bulb kit in this because I can't find a bulb. That sort of thing happens on an arcade machine where you got to kind of take it apart a little bit. Maybe the monitor goes out, and then you got to either swap in another monitor or fix the boards. But pinball machine's a whole nother devil. I mean, I'm pulling glass off. There's kids running around, and that you just don't want to.
Wow!
You can't just always fix it on the fly. There, you have to kind of wait till a day comes by just to maintain it. So
sure,
yeah. So pinball, fun.
One thing I've always wondered, and this might be not be a question for you, but I've always been kind of interested in how. I mean, I know how you would tilt a pinball machine if you hit it, but I mean, I guess for lack of a better word to say it. How does the pinball machine know that you're slapping it or hitting it? I mean,
this is going to look dirty. This is going to look dirty, and I apologize. But okay, so there's like a ring in there, right? Okay. And there's what would be a big fishing weight. Like it's a big fishing weight in this ring. And so a lot like the game Operation, when you're touching the sides and it does.
Remember that.
Rock the machine, it's rocking around in there. It's like stirring paint, right?
It's really? So I didn't know that.
It's kind of hanging on the sides, and it gives you a few warnings before you tilt it. And there may be other sensors and stuff, but the most common way is that right there. It's like hitting the side of the ring, and it tells. That's how the pinball machine knows when you're tilting it off kilter or you're beating the hell out of it. So,
well, Mike, this has been interesting, but now let's talk a little about your business. We've talked about your skill and what you've done, and we can all see the machines in the back. And believe me, ladies and gentlemen, that's just a drop in the bucket of what he has. It's really a retro game room, and it's a lot of fun. So let's talk about what the name of your business is, your hours. Do you serve food and drinks there? I mean, let's tell us all about your business now, Mike.
Sure. So the name of the business is Electric Starship Arcade. That's the little rocket ship.
I'll bring it up in chat. That's
it. My brother thought of this. I thought it was so genius. The Electric Starship, and it's actually got a plug in the fire there, which is kind of cool. Anyway. We're open Wednesday through Sunday every week. So we're closed on Monday and Tuesday, like I'm closed tonight. And typically that's when I'm working on new projects. I'm maintaining stuff that's breaking throughout the week that I can't quite get to. I like to have every game up and running. So if I have a game that's going to be down for any longer amount of time than a couple hours or something, I usually pull that game off the floor and just shove a new one in its place, unless it's something just radically big or there's not a real game that replaces it. But for the most part, these games are shaped like arcade machines, and you can kind of slide one out, slide one in. So Wednesday we open up every day at noon, and from noon until 8 o'clock, it's all ages. So if you got an infant that you can hold like football while you know, roll a trackball. That's the only thing I maybe suggest. Everybody else, hold your baby, play video games when they grow up, so or have someone else hold your baby. But you know, noon until 8 o'clock, all ages. At 8, we do have a strict 21 and up. And that gives time. One, it was what I told Haltom City I would do because we do have alcohol here. We have beer. We have our wine and beer license. And in Haltom City, there's not really a liquor license you can obtain. And I really didn't want one. The beer side of it wasn't the side I was shooting for. It was totally the arcade side of it.
Sure.
But having a beer and playing, you know, a competitive game with your buddy, really fun. So I wanted to have that alternative. But because of the agreement I had with Haltom City, it's like, look, I'm not having any kids after 8 o'clock.
Sure.
The other side of that is sometimes parents want to just get away and have fun. And this is after 8, it's a kid-free environment. Sometimes you want to let loose. Your Cubert, you know, doesn't do exactly what you want to say. He cusses at you. You may want to cuss at him from time to time. So
exactly.
There's that moment after 8 where you don't have to worry about necessarily little Timmy learning a new word. So I like having that adult swim, that little time for parents and everyone over 21 to have a time to let loose and have a place to go. But also it's hugely important to me to have the majority of the day, that first 8 hours, be family oriented because, you know, we are family owned and operated. My brother works with me. His name's Tate. Okay. You'll meet him if you're ever here because he's here just as much as I am. My 2 daughters work for me. I have twins, and they're both 21, and they both work here. And they're like, you'll see one day and one the other. I kind of stagger them. My wife will step behind the counter and work from time to time. So
the whole family's there.
That's really it. That's the family right now. You know, my brother and my kids and my wife. So, and myself. So yeah. So on I regress. Wednesday and Thursday, we're open till 11 p.m. at night. On Friday and Saturday, we're open to midnight. And on Sunday, we just stay open until 10 because it's usually dead and people are going back to work the next day. And just closed on Mondays and Tuesdays unless it's something special like a national holiday, everyone's off, or, you know, they're going all out of school or something, or spring break, we were open on Monday and Tuesday that week. But other than that, yeah, that's pretty much that. It's $10, and you can play as much as you want. You don't have to worry about running out of quarters or money or whatever.
You mentioned drinks, or do you have snacks there too?
We do. I'm glad you brought that back up. That's what I was missing there. So our fare of snacks is a lot like what you would get in a movie theater. I mean, obviously we have popcorn. We have 10 different kind of hot dogs because you have to have a certain amount of food per having beer. That's a TABC rule, oddly enough. So the food that qualifies for us is hot dogs. So we have 10 different kinds. So we have hot dogs here, nachos, Frito pie, big pickle, cotton candy, regular old candy, regular old chips, and a bunch of different kinds of soda and tea and water and beer and wine. And
I'm getting hungry already.
Yeah. So a lot like what you'd find at a movie theater is probably about the closest relative thing. That or a concession stand at the circus or at a fair or something like that. So.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I almost forgot before, Mike, I want to bring some pictures up. Mike let me take some pictures inside his business. So I want to share just some of the games that he has there. And a lot of you will probably know a lot of these games. So let's see if I can bring one up. Did you refurbish these, Mike, the Dig Dug and the Cubert?
Yeah, so the Dig Dug is the biggest refurb on that game. It had the rustiest coin door of any coin door I ever saw in my life. It literally was completely brown rust.
Oh, wow.
I used a chemical called Marhide because it was just so beyond, and which actually is a rust converter, and it just converted it to a black not control panel, but coin door. I had to add a little button. You can see it glowing at the bottom there. That's for because if Dig Dug has a natural free play, which I don't think it has, it has it would be stuck on a solid screen. So that way you can just hit the button at the bottom, and it's the equivalent of dropping a quarter. Cubert, cool. I had to redo that control panel. It had holes punched in it that weren't supposed to be there. The control panel came off of another Gottlieb cabinet, which is the same as who produced Cubert. It was a game called Mr. Do. They had converted to Mr. Do. So I converted it back to Cubert's control panel. So that was all new. The artwork was actually there on that one. I bought the cabinet up north, so it had the bezel and the marquee and the artwork on. I did have to do artwork on the side of it, and I had to obviously put boards in it, and I put a knocker in it. Kind of a fun thing about Q*bert is if you fall off the side of the little pyramid you're bouncing on, or the enemies fall off, there's a pinball knocker because Gottlieb was a pinball company.
Yes.
You actually hear a little at the bottom.
Oh, yep. Uh-huh.
And that's a knocker hitting a piece of wood, and it's to simulate a character falling out of the monitor into the wood in the arcade cabinet. So the joke is that we have to every night sweep a bunch of dead characters off out of the bottom of the machine. But yeah, that's in there too. I put that in.
Okay.
So there's a little refurbishing on that one.
Let me bring another one up here. This is the one that I think everybody will know, especially the game on the right. As you're looking at the screen, here it goes.
Sure.
How about that game on the right? I bet everybody knows what that is.
Yeah, Donkey Kong had a busted monitor. Not broken, but it was just really terrible shape. You could only see half the screen. It had what would be called vertical collapse or horizontal collapse. Vertical collapse, yeah. Because usually monitors aren't slanted that way, so it's still vertical collapse on one side. So I rebuilt the whole monitor. It had no side art. I put new side art on it. It had the joystick need to be worked on and rebuilt a little bit. There's some stickers on it need to be pulled off. The little white T-molding that are on the edges, that's a huge refurbishment and an easy way to make your game look good. I replaced that. The game to your left is called Gapless. My wife bought me the boards for it one Christmas because I wanted to make it, and I had an old Galaga cabinet because they came in the same cabinet. This is technically what would be called Galaga 3 is another name for this game. I never saw Galaga 2, but anyway, that's the name for this game is Galaga 3. But I found a guy that redid the artwork for this game, and it's beautiful. And then he did some kind of resto mod design to kind of link it a little more to Galaga and you can't see it in the picture, but it's mostly on the control panel and the little glass, the bezel glass that goes around it. And that guy doesn't make it anymore. And man, that was a machine that was completely destroyed. The bottom had caved in, rotted out. I can't tell you how many layers of Bondo I had to put on this game. And it is beautiful now. And the only hole that I didn't even punch the hole in it, was already there, is the hole for the coin button, that little red glowing light. It was there for a lock bar that was across it, so people could still have the coin door off and get the change out of them. Back in the 80s, there was a lock bar, and I just kept that hole and I just pushed a button through it and made that the point up button. That's a full restore right there, though. That's a complete
That took a lot of work.
Yeah, now that one's hours and hours and hours of work, but it looks like it's factory fresh. You can come check it out. It's awesome.
Here's another picture here that I'm going to show, and I'm a little partial to this one. We talked about this one. Mike, I think this will be two of our favorite games here.
Sure.
Let me see what the people in chat watching this think about this.
Okay.
My game personally is on the right. That Robotron, like I said, when I was a teenager, I spent hours at that.
Yeah. So both these games. I'll talk about Star Wars first. Star Wars is an old game. It's a highly sought after game. It's people would say, oh, it's a rare game. It's more that it's an expensive game because it's a hell of a lot of fun. It's got a monitor in it that would be considered pretty rare at this stage in the game. It's got a color vector monitor, and that monitor isn't like the same raster TV monitor that's in most arcade games. Like I would say maybe 98% of them. It's a color vector, so it's going to be the same monitor. It's according to which color vector's in it, but it's going to be like the same monitor you find in a Tempest, if you remember that game.
Yes, I do.
That, not a lot of restore. I did add there's a company in Dallas, I think, called Vector Labs. They made a little kit that you could install on the boards to where you can play Empire Strikes Back on that game as well. So it's a dual game. You can play two different games on it. I did put a whole new yoke on it because the original yoke has plastic gears in it, and I didn't know if they would hold up in an arcade format. I knew I'd be wincing every time someone played it. So a company called Allen One makes a brand new whole yoke. You cannot tell the difference in it other than if you open it up, it has metal gears in it instead of those ones. As you can see, I have the same. I didn't replace the marquee sticker just because there's one that I'll accept the patina that looks all cracking when I never had on it. I had to install a light when I put it in here. And then I was like, oh, look at that cracked up marquee, but it's screen printed right onto glass. It's not something you can simply replace. You'd have to kind of wrap a new one on it. And I really liked that. I didn't mind it. It kind of has a stained glass effect. The game to the right is Robotron 2084. It's a less known game to people. but I introduce people to it all the time. This is a fantastic twin stick shooter, and basically you're moving your character with the left hand all around the screen and avoiding enemies while saving Mikey and mom and dad there.
Yep.
And then with the right stick, you're shooting in all directions. A later game that would be a game just like this would be maybe Smash TV, or that was our Total Carnage. These were twin stick shooters where you're moving the character with one hand and you're simply shooting with a different joystick that looks identical with the other hand. The thing about this game is it's changing constantly. It was built by Williams, and a lot of these Williams games have these beautiful bright colors, beautiful sound effects. I think it takes 5 or 6 boards to run this little bitty game that you could probably fit on the darkest, deepest, tiniest corner of a phone nowadays. But back then, it took 5 boards to run this game. And it was hell to get started. I'll be honest with you. This game,
I'm sure.
had the control panel was completely stripped, so it didn't have any artwork on it. You can't really see it in these darker pictures, but if you're here, you'll see it has a brand new control panel art, which is currently produced. That's something you can get pretty common.
Cool.
Yeah, and it's a wooden control panel, so I had a bunch of holes punched in it to make it other games over time. And those holes, I had to fill those with, wood and Bondo. And so I rebuilt that whole control panel. I'd worked on those boards forever. I put new ROMs on the boards to make it run a little better. Ultimately, I've sent those boards off. And I finally got someone that took the whole game for a little bit and got it running good, because it'd run good for me for like 30 minutes. But if you got it on for 12 hours in arcade, it would like flip the screen upside down or go away, or just weird stuff. So it was a labor of love, but I absolutely love this game. I recommend it to anyone. It may seem slightly confusing at first because the general controller that you put in a kid's hand typically has the movement on the left hand, which this does, but then the right hand is touching buttons to do different things, whereas this is another joystick. So you're actually working 2 joysticks at the same time. Super fun, though. Great game. It is. Ours is great. I love it.
Well, let me just tell you, my audience one more time. The name of Mike's business is Electric Starship Arcade. And Mike, do you have a website they can look at?
Totally. So we have electricstarship.arcade.com. So that's our website, and you can go on there, and we have kind of a list of our food and menu and games and just general information for our site. And it's just a little website. You can always go to Facebook. You can reach me there. It's Electric Starship Arcade. YouTube, I've made a ton of videos on YouTube now. And some are restore videos, some are new game gets, some are just silly stuff around here where we're opening garbage while kids eating bubble gum. I mean, just weird stuff that people would really dig. So YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, but we don't go on Twitter a whole lot. TikTok, I've even made some videos for TikTok.
Oh, wow, that's good.
So yeah, we're on most social media formats. You can just type in Electric Starship Arcade and just pull us up on Google, and I'm sure you can run into pretty much any information you want to find out about us. And I'm on OpenBook too. You can always email or call me here. So
absolutely.
Be glad to have you.
Well, Mike, I appreciate you being here. I've learned a lot just by talking to you. I mean, it's a lot of things that, I've always played the video game, but unfortunately, I've never thought about what goes on behind the scenes.
Sure,
know, how much it takes to control. So I appreciate your diligence and your work to keep these classic games, and not just for us, but for the future generations, our kids, our grandkids, maybe even our great grandkids. Will play this.
I hope there's people out there that still love it as much as I do, because without the without the arcade community, without the local collectors, without those last few guys that knows how to work on that one weird board to keep a game running, without them, I don't think there would be much of me. So, I appreciate obviously God and my wife and my daughters and my brother and all the collectors and all the friends and all the regulars that come in here. So.
Okay. Well, Mike, I appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on the Van Buren Variety Show. And definitely check out your business, Electric Starship Arcade.
Yeah, we're right here in Haltom City. Bob, it was great. And I love talking. Like I said, I can go on for as long as you want to talk about it. So I appreciate you having me on tonight.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. Have a good night. And ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, it always, when we're just having fun, the time runs out. I appreciate every one of you tuning in to the Van Buren Variety Show tonight. Just as a reminder, I am here every Tuesday night at 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Eastern, where we have a different guest every week with a different topic. Again, it could be a profession, it could be a hobby, a special talent, even some musical entertainment, and some other types of entertainment as well. So make sure you tune in to the Van Buren Variety Show, Tuesday nights, 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. This is Bob Van Buren for the Van Buren Variety Show. Have a great night, everyone.